folks from labor, folks from the community, folks from religious organizations, a coalition that's strong enough to be able to get all of what it is that we deserve. And the only way that we're going to get it is if we fight for it.
Here to protect the jobs for the few. We're here to unite with all working people, the working poor, and the poor, in order to ensure that we all have better conditions. We have solidarity amongst all workers. We accept no differences or distinctions.
Okay, I'd like to get this meeting started. This is the second of two meetings that the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, Tom Amiano, has called of the Finance and Labor Committee to deal with the issue of the living wage ordinance.
I'd like to welcome you, all of you here to the second hearing on living wage for San Francisco. At the first hearing, we heard testimony from low-wage workers and their allies, members of labor unions, community organizations, and the religious community on the need for a living wage ordinance. At this hearing, we'll hear further testimony on the kind of living wage ordinance that meets the needs of San Francisco. These hearings are to hear from the people of San Francisco on what kind of a living wage ordinance will work for us in San Francisco. At the last hearing, we heard moving testimony from low-wage workers that the cost of living is too high to be able to support themselves and their children. We heard from many that even though they worked full-time, they were not making enough to survive. These included workers who care for our children and our elderly and who provide services that allow people with disabilities to remain in our communities and lead independent lives. At this hearing, more workers will tell personal stories of courage and endurance and will testify to what they need to do to lift their families out of poverty. Living wage ordinances have been passed in 20 other cities and counties across the country, including Oakland and San Jose. Berkeley and Hayward are in the process of adopting living wage ordinances. In each place a living wage ordinance was being considered, some businesses came forward to oppose the ordinance, saying it would bankrupt the city and bankrupt businesses. At this hearing, we will also hear from those who have studied the results of living wage ordinances that none of these bad things have happened. In fact, cities that have living wage ordinances, most of the increased costs were absorbed by the contractors who still made a substantial profit. We still hear testimony from nonprofit service providers that a living wage would ensure that more families can move out of poverty and towards self-sufficiency, with less dependence on publicly funded services such as health care. We'll also hear testimony from businesses that pay a living wage that they are being undercut by businesses that pay poverty wages. These businesses face unfair competition from publicly subsidized businesses that underpay their workers. We will hear how paying a living wage results in a more stable, efficient, and productive workforce with less turnover and training costs. A living wage ordinance will boost the local economy as many parts of our city that really need help. As most of our poorest residents have been spending income, this will benefit their neighborhoods. Unlike the wealthy, the working poor spends most of their money in the low-income communities where they live. Also, the crisis to our public health care system is from the strain of treating workers who employers do not provide medical benefits. Businesses and taxpayers are asking, why should they have to pay a business for a lucrative city contract and also pay for public services for their business workers? When families are living in the hopelessness and despair of abject poverty, it tears the social fabric of the city. We call on those in the business community who are mobilizing on scare tactics to instead investigate the negative effects of poverty wages on our economic and social infrastructure. Studies have shown that what draws businesses and industry is an educated workforce. Parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet have little time to educate or even be with their children. They don't have the time to be involved in the churches or community organizations that strengthen the fabric of the community. We must think of what lesson we are teaching the generation that is our future. If we want to send the message to our youth that work pays, then a day's work must be rewarded by a fair day's pay. Poverty is what is bad for our business climate. Paying a living wage is good for our city and our working families.
And therefore today, you elected supervisors and mayor, we asking that you reach into the money that the government has given you and extend it out to stop putting it in your pockets, because we need it more than you do. And so we asking that you vote for the living cost wage today. And we're going to keep coming back until you do. We will not give up.
So next we have Dolly Clemente.
Good morning to all my brothers and sisters. My name is Dolly Clemente. I'm a caregiver like you. We all need a good living wage. We have to have a good living wage above poverty.
Last we have Jen Garcia with UFCW Local 648.
Good afternoon, everyone. Local 648 is here to support all working people. We represent over 4,000 retail workers here in San Francisco, and every day our workers with union jobs are having a harder and harder time to stay in the city. They're having to move further and further out. And so all of the workers that belong with UFCW Local 648 support workers, the home health care workers, and a minimum wage that can let people live with some dignity as they take care of our most prized possessions, our elders, our moms, our grandmas. Who else do we have that does this for us? We all deserve dignity as we work and dignity as we live, and we should have that in San Francisco. And that's why UFCW Local 648 is here today to support the workers and the minimum wage ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So now we will all gather together and we're going to go to the second floor in front of room 250. And from there, we're going to go to each individual supervisor's office. Let them know we mean business, and we're also going to hand them the petition cards we've been collecting for the last couple of years.
I mean, there's some other potentially
Buenos días. Así como dice Rudy, soy una trabajadora de cuidado en casa por 25 años y he andado como 22 años en el movimiento laboral, y quiero reconocer al mayor porque ahora es un día muy histórico donde ella firma un aumento por 4 años.
Yes, as Rudy was saying, my name is Claudia. I'm an in-home care support services worker. I've been doing this work for 25 years. Of those 25 years, I've been involved in the union movement 22 of those years. I'm so excited to be here today. This is a historic day as Mayor Breed signs this important legislation that will have a huge impact on our lives.
Y quiero agradecer también a un grupo de supervisores que también trabajaron a la par de nosotros, igual como la mayor. Eso quiere decir que nuestro trabajo lo están reconociendo ya.
I also want to recognize the incredible and fierce leadership of several boards of supervisors who, because of their leadership, we were able to get to this final deal. I feel like as a home care service worker that finally our work is being recognized, that we do have dignity and respect.
Yo sabía que ella nos iba a apoyar porque cuando ella habló con nosotros, ella hizo el trabajo que nosotros y que yo hago, y por eso ella tenía que apoyarnos y firmar el aumento, porque el trabajo de nosotros es muy duro y mal pagado.
I remember when Mayor Breed met with many of us workers of home care, and she actually has a home care story as well. and she understands how difficult this work is. So I was not surprised when she made a decision to sign this legislation.
Esto va a ser histórico y va a ser un mensaje para todo California, porque San Francisco es el número 1 que va a ganar más de todo California.
And I just want to remind everyone, without a doubt, this has a tremendous impact on the roughly 20,000 home care providers here in San Francisco. But the day after the election, this also sends a message that the city and county of San Francisco has created a new standard for home care providers. That message will be sent across the country, across the region, and throughout the state of California. Thank you, Si Se Puede.